Hello everyone, Laura K. Buzz here. You might already know me from some things I do on the internet. I'm on the Podquisition podcast with Jim Sterling and Gavin Dunn. That's probably what you know me from. It's where most people seem to know me from. It's a video game podcast where ostensibly we talk about news and opinions we have on video games we've played. A lot more of it is us just chatting bollocks and being very silly. People seem to enjoy it. But I'm also on a couple of other podcasts already. You might know me from Queer and Pleasant Strangers, which is a podcast I do with my fiancée Jane. We do silly voices and skits and just have a bit of a nice, queer, gentle catch-up on our weeks. I'm also on Dice Funk. It's a Dungeons & Dragons podcast, 5th edition, real play podcast. Across seasons 3, 4 and 5 of that show, I have played everything from a Yu-Gi-Oh! Wizard that just wants to be a better dad, to a space hippo with a shotgun who is drunk all the time and wants to make friends and smooch everyone in space. It's a good time. You should probably try listening to them. They're great. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today because I made a very scary choice recently to go back to being a solo content creator. Many of you might know I started out as a full-time games critic probably about 5 years ago now on Patreon. It was a great opportunity for me to talk about games the way I wanted to really focus on the projects I found exciting and the things I was passionate about, and it really gave me a foothold to make creative work my living. But here's the thing. The first time around on Patreon, I struggled with some things, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. I struggled with getting a good work-life balance. I worked too much, and when you overwork yourself, you end up getting worse results out of more time spent working because you don't give yourself enough time to relax and to recover between. That's something I had to learn from the first time. The other issue I had was I struggled a lot with the nature of the income. It's a fluctuating income model that I wasn't entirely prepared for, and I had to take a lot of soul-searching to get ready for that. So I spent a couple of years doing salaried games industry work, and you know, that taught me a lot. By doing salaried game industry work, I learnt how to be much better about managing my time, about work-life balance, about setting schedules. I got you know what the other thing was, though? I had a stable salary, and a stable salary wasn't what made me happy. What makes me happy is getting to passionately create the things that I want to create, to go for ambitious projects that don't seem doable and to go, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this silly creative project. So after nearly 2 years of not being crowdfunded, I've decided to come back to Patreon, and that's where we are now. So now seems like a good time to talk about the things that are coming soon, because I've talked about the things that I currently do already, those podcasts like Podquisition, Dice Funk, Queer and Pleasant Strangers. But what's going to be new when I come to Patreon? Well, I've got some new podcasts in the works, some of which are a bit further ahead and aren't quite ready yet, but some of which are going to launch very, very soon, like in the next week or two kind of soon. One of them is called Tonal Whiplash, and I'm really excited for this podcast. It's an interview podcast that keeps things short and succinct at about 20 to 30 minutes per interview. We've got some really fantastic guests lined up for it. And the whole idea is we alternate serious interview question and a silly interview question. By going back and forth, it really gives an opportunity to dig into what makes that creator's work interesting and also get a bit of personality out of them when you ask them something like, what teenage fashion choice do you look back on now and cringe? It's a way to look at both sides of them as a person, and I've been really enjoying the kind of conversations it's been facilitating. Beyond that, I'm planning to go back to making more video content. It's something that I loved doing and haven't really had an opportunity to do in the last couple of years. I'm going to be Twitch streaming on Mondays, Tuesdays and Fridays. I'm going to have pre-recorded video content going up during the week. Most of my short hands-on impressions about games will become video content. I will capture footage of the game that I've been playing, talk casually about what my thoughts on that game are, put it together in a 5 to 10 minute long video. But that's not to say I won't be doing written content. In fact, I love written content, and I'm going to be expanding the kinds of written content I do. Less of my work will be focused solely on video games, and I'll be expanding. I'll be writing about video games, but also music, movies, comics, disability-related issues, LGBT-related issues, things that matter to me and that I get excited to write about. Beyond that, I would like to use the opportunity of coming back to Patreon to be more ambitious, and I sort of touched on this at the beginning of this video. I want to be more ambitious with the kinds of things I create, and some of these ambitious ideas are exciting and terrifying, and I want to be able to put time into them. I'm going to talk about one of them now that I hope to spend the next year working on. By the time that E3 2020 comes around, I want to be in a position to host a Nintendo Direct-style pre-recorded press conference. The idea being, I want to have a little space at E3 to show off small indie games, particularly ones from disabled, queer, non-white creators, that might not get an opportunity to shine in even like a press conference like, say, a Devolver Digital or a Kind of Funny Game showcase. I want to find really small little games and let their first trailers all come together in one spot. And I don't know how well that's going to go, but I want to spend a year working on that. I want to try and put together something for this time next year I can be really proud of. I want to put more time into creating books. The last year I've written 2 books while working a day job, and I'd like to be able to do press opportunities for those existing books when they come out, but I'd like to put more time into making long-form stuff like that. Some of them will be books, some of them will be long-form online writing. I want to get back to writing lengthy stuff that I'm an expert in. A great example. I'm 400 hours currently into Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, and I wrote a thing recently about going and catching all of the shiny Pokemon in that game, but I want to keep writing weird minutiae stuff about that game. I want to write about when I'm probably, 600 hours in, I want to write about the experience of beating every Master Trainer, getting full IVs, AVs, EV stats on all those Pokemon, getting everything ready for Sword and Shield, and just writing about, wringing every little bit of fun out of that game I can. That's an example of the kind of thing I want the room to do, to find games that I seem to be more interested in than perhaps anyone else, and try and make it easier for people to understand why I find those games so fascinating. I want to talk about small games, I want to talk about games I love, I want to talk about the things that I love, and this is why I want to come back to Patreon. I want to make 2019 and 2020 the years that I work on myself, and that I work on my own projects, and I work on big things, small things, adventurous things, risky things, new things that are my projects, and that no matter what happens, I will always own the project. It'll always be mine. So, thank you very much. I am relying on Patreon to make this a career for me again. You did this once for me, Patreon, and I hope that we can do this again. Thank you.